What's up guys, how's it going? Today we're counting down the top 10 hardest levels in Super Mario World without any power-ups, no Yoshis, no checkpoints, or any hidden block switches. Just how hard is it to take small Mario from the beginning to the very end of this adventure? Let's be honest, Super Mario World becomes a pretty simple game to get through when you're able to twirl your cape through everybody, float through the air, or tank unlimited amounts of hits with Yoshi. Plus there's the aid of additional blocks and power-ups you can unleash to make the game even more forgiving in a lot of areas. But once you forego all of these power-ups, every magical powerful Yoshi, and even the checkpoints that power you up, Super Mario World is a very challenging game underneath the surface. There are only a handful of moments in the entire game that seem to require a power-up, not accounting for any wild tricks or glitches, but it's not nearly as often as you might think. One great example is when you need to use the big spin jump to get through the blocks in Star World 1, or a couple of secret exits. There's only a few places where you actually need the cape. Or in Valley of Bowser 4 when you have to use Yoshi at the very end to grab the key through the wall, but those are just secret exits. What I've found is every single level is possible with Small Mario from beginning to end with no other assistance. Before we start the countdown, I'd love to know, which levels do you remember being the hardest? Are there challenges like this that you've tried yourself? Without further delay, here are the top 10 hardest levels as Small Mario in Super Mario World. Number 10, Vanilla Dome. When going into this challenge, playing each level as Small Mario, I figured for the most part it would become gradually more difficult. I wasn't anticipating any outright brick walls of difficulty, but that's exactly what we get with Vanilla Dome. It's all due to one section where you're intended to grab a star as the floor slowly descends into the lava below. Majority of the level isn't anything too outside of the norm, but there's fundamental issues here getting through this part. First of all, you're supposed to easily achieve full speed with the star running through the beetles. You might think, no problem, just reach full speed and jump just in time, but that's something they make very difficult. Notice how this first ledge has an incline, which totally impedes your momentum. Now of course you can jump over the hill, but you don't gain momentum while jumping either. So as you're trying to build up speed, what will end up happening is you'll jump to avoid being hit while not going nearly fast enough. And try as you might, you won't get anywhere near close to the end to jump for it. There isn't any time to spare here. This section is meant for you to maintain full speed, and if you can't do that, you're just not going to make it. After several deaths in a row, trying anything to make it easier to reach top speed without dying, I start to try to think outside the box because there's just no way we can get stumped here. It's only the beginning of the third world. I started to wonder, what if I could grab a shell? They don't make it easy, but I backtracked for one. The first guy you see spawns right off the edge, so we can't really use him, but a few jumps back, we do find one to use. The idea is to release this right at the last second, building up to sprint speed, jumping at the right time to not get hit by the return bounce, and then we can finally get past this part. I'm sure that it's not, but it seems almost impossible without a shell. Everything else was going pretty well, and I didn't die too much until this section, then everything hit the fan. Unsurprisingly, it's not too bad to finish out, but this is a significant and legit obstacle, making Vanilla Dome number 10 on the list. Number 9, Larry's Castle. In the 7th Koopa Kid's castle, right before Bowser's castle, we've got a solid test of control here. You ride on blocks that act like a snake, winding around obstacles for a bit more than 70 seconds. A fair amount of it is pretty mild, just have to keep up to avoid falling off with some jumps over the swinging mace balls. You do need to make some jumps to stay along with it, but there are a couple of moments that are pretty tight. One of which would have a yellow block to provide a mushroom right before it. The back and forth around this single mace is the toughest part. After getting through a tedious and pretty tough section like this, naturally you'd want a checkpoint. This level's checkpoint is more of a secret anyway, located down below, off screen. But of course we can't grab that, so knowing any death after this means we have to repeat this section. Proceeding onward, there's a reappearing Magic Koopa that can be pretty dangerous. Need to influence his aim the best you can to stay safe, and to hopefully go where you want it. We move on past where there would be another mushroom, the dry bones, undead Koopas coming back to life, to go along with the magic Koopa reappearing to throw magic, means you have to stay ready and alert. If you don't hesitate much, you can bop the magic Koopas as well. To do it all in one go, you can't waste too much time. With all the spikes, fireballs, magic Koopas, and the multiple walls you need the Koopa magic to hit to get through, all that on top of the starting snake section that's over a minute long, you could see why it's at least a decent little challenge. Then we get to the boss. Getting to Larry, the last thing you want to do is die here and have to repeat everything all over again. It's like an advanced version of the first boss of the game. But Larry, compared to Iggy, has these 3 fireballs coming up and down. It's important to not panic and bop when the timing is right to get Larry scooted off right into the lava. Between the block snaking and the Magic Koopa stuff, while trying to finish clean, I found Larry's castle, worthy of number 9 on the list. Number 8. I've got a bit of a tie between 2 water levels, Soda Lake and Ghost Ship. Soda Lake is swimming with plenty of fish and torpedo Teds, an enemy exclusive to Soda Lake. It's one of those levels that really gets more difficult the more you hesitate, because the screen fills quickly with constant refires. Hitting everything at a swift pace makes things much easier to get through. If you take just a bit too much time, you'll see that the open space quickly vanishes. There's a fair amount out to get you, and you have to be comfortable swimming through some tight spaces. The other water level that could be possibly debated as even more difficult would be the Ghost Ship. Precise swimming without much room for error, and having to stomp on the brakes to avoid ghosts, is what you'll find aboard this haunted ship. It's a beautiful callback to the Bowser ships from Super Mario Bros. 3. And it ends up being one of the toughest swim tests in the game. It's pretty notorious and can seem ridiculous if you don't know how much you can control Mario in the water. It's not just a fixed height of bobbing up and down that you can do, but holding up or down on the D-pad greatly influences just how high or low Mario will go from each stroke. If you're struggling with swimming up into ghosts, holding down ensures that you won't shoot up into anything, which gives you a lot of control to get through these reappearing fields of ghosts. You still have to be careful though, because they can appear right in your face. On a normal playthrough, this is pretty much the entire challenge. They knew it was a testy section, which is why they spawn a star right below you as you're coming through this pipe. Holding left or holding right, or nothing at all, won't prevent you from getting it. Since you do spawn right into it, the best workaround I could think of is it doesn't count if you don't come in contact with anything. How do you negate invincibility? Don't touch anything. Even though a falling Mario would bop a Koopa, the cleanest way to call this legit is to avoid everything. And by the end, after avoiding the second star, all of these large spike balls get really sketchy. And hitting any of these means doing all of the swimming through all of those ghosts again, which is a real bummer. But with the right anticipation and reactions, you'll finally get to the bottom safely, triggering the entrance into Bowser's Valley. They're both noteworthy, difficult water levels, but it could be argued either way for sure, making Soda Lake and Ghost Ship a tie for number 8 on the list. Number 7. Bowser's Castle, taking the most difficult route possible. There's 8 different doors to choose from in Bowser's Castle. It seems they had a really hard time narrowing down all their ideas. Choosing the simplest doors can make for a pretty easy way to Bowser, but what are the most difficult challenges here? Door number 1 is considered to be the hardest. And I can tell you, without all of these hidden blocks to provide more ground to stand on, this short auto-scrolling section can crush and burn through so many of your lives, it's hard to keep track. It took me almost 20 attempts to get consistent with this part, because the timing of the fireballs and those crushers are just so rough. And something you wouldn't even consider, I know I didn't, is that the position of these crushers do vary. They're not always in the same place, which I think is influenced by where Mario is, but not enough to make it very obvious, so that's a pretty bizarre part of the challenge. There are some clips that make it really easy to tell that where these things are coming down are not the same spot. When things were getting smoother, I found myself getting comfortable hanging back for the first crusher, and then trying to move toward the front of the screen for the second two. For the second round of 4 doors, the tightest margin is probably door 5, but it's also the fastest and simplest once you have the timing down. But overall, for the second round, the hardest room is considered door number 6. Door 6 has probably the most difficult swimming section in the entire game. There's dry bones, lots of spikes, and large mace balls that you need to carefully swim up through here. Your swim control will be tested, there's no doubt about that. There's quite the intentional flow behind the level too, and the timing of these moving pieces altogether can make things quite difficult. Thank goodness the chains don't harm Mario, otherwise it'd be really hard to find a safe place to swim as you wait to make your move past the last set of moving spikes. The final hallway to Bowser is surprisingly mild. It's kinda crazy that you encounter these guys from Super Mario Bros. 2 in just this one spot in the entire game. And they're not that unique, just jump in place. So it's simple to move by the Mecha Koopas and these guys. And then we reach Bowser. It would be nice to have a little cushion for this fight, but he's honestly not that tough of a final boss. Just have to land on and kick up these Mecha Koopas. Each time you do that twice, you've got these fireballs that rain down and enter the next phase of the fight. The easiest thing to do here is get right next to the first ones that fall, that way you know the spacing will work out, so one won't land on your head. We have to avoid the mushroom Peach throws our way to continue the fight. Bowser needs to be hit 6 times total, 3 rounds of 2. When he drops a large ball, nothing too difficult about that, but when he bounces around, that's when things are a bit more deadly. But 2 more hits, and just like that we've defeated Bowser, rescued the princess, all with the mighty power of Small Mario. When you take the toughest route to Bowser, especially door number 1 with no power-ups or blocks to help out, Bowser's Castle has earned number 7 on the list. Number 6, Groovy. Now we're getting into the special world. So you've got a level that's straight up intended to be a fun time with Yoshi, with his egg available in the first block, and they offer the 4 different colored shells, meaning you get the best stuff right away. You could fly or stomp your way through this, but not with Small Mario. You've got the spiky-headed guys, the aptly named Pokey. The spin jump really helps make this level much more manageable. The piranha heads can also be pretty unforgiving. I honestly hate how aggressive the lip hitbox is. Like, come on, what sense does that make? Things are somewhat challenging with tall enemies you can't destroy and flowers that shoot their orbs out. It can be a tough pairing of enemies, it's pretty tight spacing around these guys. The whole level is pretty much built on the dynamic between these 2 enemies. It's a menacing design. It takes some real skill, the pairing of Pokies and these plants, 2 enemies that you can't take out on your own. And here they offer any power-up of your choice, which is pretty telling that there's a good amount of enemies ahead. They're flat out giving you the option to just use a star and run through the rest of the level. The deliberate setups at the end are what make it so difficult to get through. These baseball throwing chucks next to this flower and caterpillar, the main reason this stage is on here due to that setup. It's so intentionally overwhelming and tight, it serves as a real brick wall to stop any casual attempts dead in their tracks. That is, if you even manage to get this far. Super fun fact, Groovy is the level on the start screen of the game. Just noticed that while writing about it. That's pretty fascinating, and I'll never look at the start screen quite the same way. It takes some real skill to get through with Small Mario. The enemies are really tough together, and this last setup feels so intense, making it number 6 on the list. Number 5, Butter Bridge 2. Butter Bridge 2 is absolutely loaded with Super Koopas. You're clearly intended to use the cape. They try to give it to you right away so you can lean on it through the entire stage, but without it, things get pretty demanding. You constantly have an enemy or 2 flying at your face with multiple shells being kicked your direction. It's a pretty aggressive assault. You have to make it through quite a bit before reaching the first checkpoint, which is also a strange thing to maneuver since you need additional height on your jump to avoid it. There would be a green block to get a cape here, not to mention the few Super Koopas that also hold the cape. They really do keep trying to give this power to help out the player. The near constant pressure of death flying into your face can't be overlooked. It's just a lot that comes your way for the entire stage. It's easy to see why things get pretty frustrating out here. It just adds up to be testy, unforgiving platforming with a bunch of menaces trying to take you out. It really is a pretty decent onslaught at a lot of points throughout the stage, feeling on edge every step of the way. There's also variety and even greater numbers out there the further you get into the level. This is not an easy stage to finish as Small Mario. Butterbridge 1 is difficult in its own right, with its auto-scrolling and jumps that have varying pace, but Butterbridge 2 is a place I honestly struggled with for at least 20 minutes, so it's a stiff number 5 on the list. Number 4. Mondo. You get a real indicator early on that this level is going to be a gigantic pain. Swimming upstream, it's about as fun as it sounds. Throw in some annoying fish and a hammer bro first thing, you've got a pretty rude start to a level. It really makes you want to go grab some power-ups. Getting beyond this guy just makes you dread that you'll end up having to do it again and again for every death after this point. There's already an expression coming to mind that resonates, being stuck up a certain creek without a paddle. That's basically how this stage feels and plays. Some of these fish can be killed if their pattern is to go vertically, and if they struggle at the surface of the water, but any touches aside from that, even if they're so close to the surface, you are done for. If you ever need to burn the death sound into your memory after only about 5 seconds of music, this level is pretty great for that. The level of the water does ascend and descend as you move through the stage. The worst moments are with the Hammer Bros, and 3 of the 4 are toward the beginning of the stage, and another right before the end. It still gets tense out here with all of the fish, but nothing strikes fear into the heart like battling a current as hammers get hurled your way. It's such a ruthless way to start a level, I guess you can thank them for trying to prepare you so soon. But either way, this is a very challenging level to get through with Small Mario, making it a worthy number 4 on the list. Number 3. Awesome. This ice level laced with dinos and Koopas kicking shells is one heck of a challenge. It's flat out a very dangerous stage. Things can happen to you in such a hurry. Sometimes you want to play it a bit more safe. There's these little waves of the double hit dinos, which are tempting to try to bounce on all consecutively, possibly for a 1-up if you can manage to get 8 to 10 if other Koopas enter the frame, but at the same point, especially after some deaths, you may get pretty sick of doing that and just pass on them quickly. The second half of the level is honestly pretty treacherous. The ice physics continue onto these purple columns, and there's all these fish getting shot up on your left and right basically until the stage is over. So dying here comes quick, and it gets pretty annoying to keep repeating the first half of the stage, especially mistakes with trying to get back to this part. And as you can see, plain as day, they put a Fire Flower power-up right out here for the player to provide protection against these constantly flying fish. But we just need to make our way past it for some really tricky moments with giant bullet bills, slippery platforms, even a few single slippery block jumps, all while these fish just won't stop coming. The only thing that will fill you with awe about Awesome is how awfully quick it can crush through your lives, especially if you're trying to get through it all as just Small Mario. It gets so tense out there and doesn't offer much forgiveness with some of these chaotic jumps. It's enough to make you clench for minutes at a time, and it was one of the very toughest stages to finish with Small Mario, making Awesome a ruthless number 3 on the list. Number 2, Outrageous. Now this is a well-suited name, especially for this challenge, because getting through this level with Small Mario is downright outrageous. It is an unusual concept to carry a springboard through most of the stage, and it's extra tough without the help of Yoshi or any power-ups. There are these fire enemies that leave hot embers behind, plenty of wigglers, combined with a bunch of bullet bills, and being shot out at multiple heights from both directions. I lost an embarrassing amount of lives here, before even realizing that you kinda need to bring the springboard over to this pipe. I thought I just had to bounce on the top bullet bill, but I promise it's more daunting than it looks. The height and timing just does not work out here. Having to get back here carrying the springboard the entire time is much more tricky since you can't spin jump and have to hold Y. It kind of feels like an escort mission. And after all of this tight platforming, and this hammer bro swinging on the gray blocks, next we have enemies busting out of blocks. The squirmy fish are a problem. Flailing out of water makes things so uneasy and hard to anticipate. The fire and the Goombas make it that much worse. For the final stretch, they hand over Yoshi, which would be so nice to use. After we've got some piranha plants with fireballs, have to be careful here. The home stretch has some more tense moments with piranha heads and fire enemies. The exit arrow gets you excited because you're close, but they still make you earn it with some unpleasant surprises. One last hammer bro, a wiggler, bullet bills. You've got to be swift and careful in order to not do everything all over again. By the way, did you catch that? Did you realize deceased Mario bumps on wigglers on the way down? I checked to see if it would happen with other enemies, but no, apparently just wigglers have that priority. That is so strange. The level lives up to its name. It's extremely challenging as Small Mario, things get crazy, and they ask a lot from the player, making outrageous number 2 on the list. There's honestly quite the solid honorable mentions list here. Dozens of levels are worth mentioning. As soon as Donut Plains 1, there are some tricky moments with all of the baseball throwing chucks, having to ignore all the feather opportunities. Between the plants and their orbs, Super Koopas, and chucks, it's kinda challenging, and that's not surprising because they give you the best power-up in the game repeatedly, and Yoshi, so you have to be careful to hold on to your one hit and finish it out. All of the castles out there, even starting with the second and third, have their tense moments. Not being able to spin through dry bones with the cape and having to make sure jumps were pure without the gliding makes things a lot more demanding. The castles of Small Mario really change things up. Many of the water levels were that much more tense, knowing that not a single mistake could be made, having to keep it moving away from especially annoying enemies that incessantly chase you. Being able to use a twirling cape, fire flower, or Yoshi makes these a whole lot easier. It's really important that you hold up or down on the D-pad when swimming in order to control how high or low you rise with each stroke. Chocolate Island did have some challenging parts with their unique assortment of fire-breathing mini and giant dinos. Not being able to bulldoze through enemies with power-ups was obviously a big game changer, and there are some trickier moments over gaps and paratroopas. Valley of Bowser gets pretty irritating, especially with Valley of Bowser 2, these parts with the giant moles. I absolutely hated the last part. Not having Yoshi or the cape here is just so awful to finish things off. Way Cool from Special World was also quite annoying. You better believe Castles 4, 5, and 6 certainly have their difficult and tricky moments. A handful of the Boo Houses and Fortresses were pretty challenging, and it wouldn't be right to not mention Valley Fortress because at face value it is overall a top 5 hardest level in the entire game. It's short and deadly with the end being particularly tight. This does crush you no matter how powered up you are. It's only with the additional restrictions that enhance the difficulty so much of some other levels that it moves this out somewhere probably in the top 15. Alright, here we are at number 1. To a lot of players out there, I'm sure this won't come as a surprise. Number 1, Tubular. Tubular is the top of the list with a couple things to discuss. It's a notoriously hard stage when you get the P balloon and have to float across a bottomless pit with a bunch of things out to hit you, grabbing 3 P balloons in total to finish the stage. Firstly, the way you beat this level doesn't allow for a single hit regardless of if you're Big Mario, because getting hit in any power-up stage still makes you fall to your doom. And you're really quite vulnerable with all the dangerous baseball throwing chucks and fire shooting flowers. The beginning becomes very routine and stylish getting to the P balloon, but they really pack the challenge into a relatively short section. There are 3 P balloons to grab on the way over to the exit. There's chucks throwing baseballs, punting footballs, the flower orbs. There's a lot to avoid. Plus, not knowing at first where the other balloons are means you'll be running out of steam and falling for another try. After enough practice, you'll know where to go, where is safe, and it's often considered the hardest stage in the game for these reasons. No power-ups or items in your backup slot can help you take more hits, and that's a big reason for its infamy. With the P-Balloon, I would probably rank Tubular in the number 7 to number 8 territory on the list, around the Sunken Ship and Soda Lake, but probably not above Bowser's Castle with the hardest route. Somebody could argue that the P-Balloon is a power-up, although it doesn't actually power you up to take any more hits, it does grant you the power of temporarily floating. If a P-Balloon is a power-up and can't be used, then Tubular becomes something miles above the rest of the list. Tubular without the P-Balloon, is it even possible? Well, as unthinkable as it seems, yes it is. Let's look at what it takes to even attempt this insane feat of Small Mario without Yoshi or the P-Balloon. The truth is, it's on another level entirely. It's, at best, on the very edge of even seeming intentional by design, but perhaps not, for multiple reasons. You need to reach full speed, and there's not even enough room for you to run and do that. So in order to do so, you'd have to rock back and forth on this bit of ground here to build up speed, and this is where the madness starts. Perfectly spaced jumps, zero mistakes, and a maneuver that is apparently frame perfect with the P-switch, where you have to let go of it at just the perfect time and land on it in just the most perfect way to miraculously get past this flower. Believe me, I hate to admit it, but this level, as it stands, is above my current skill level with the game. I tried. Honestly, I gave it my best shot, and this just isn't going anywhere. I can't even get out of the gate with enough speed to give it a try. It's just way too much. This is what it looks like to get through the stage. It's almost unspeakable. It's outrageous, it's awesome, it's masochistic, and it's totally Tubular being able to get through Tubular without Yoshi or the P-Balloon, making it number 1 on the list on the top 10 hardest levels as Small Mario in Super Mario World. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.